from the moment Clara saw her sitting on the corner of Maple Street, clutching a tattered coat around her frail frame. Something in her chest tightened. The rain had started to fall in heavy sheets, soaking the sidewalks and splashing into the gutters, but the woman hadn't moved, hadn't sought shelter under the small awning of the closed coffee shop. Her hair was a matted halo of grey, her eyes hidden beneath the shadow of a worn cap, and yet when their gazes met, there was a spark, a silent plea that pierced Clara in a way she couldn't ignore. She slowed her car at the light, her fingers gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary, a nagging thought whispering in her mind. She shouldn't just drive past this time. It was impulsive, maybe even reckless, but Clara felt a pull that she hadn't experienced in years, a mixture of fear and compassion, curiosity and a deep, inexplicable empathy. When the light turned green, she drove past, only to feel the sudden shame of leaving someone behind in the cold. Without thinking twice, she swerved into the parking lot of the small, dimly lit bakery across the street. She stepped out, water seeping through her shoes, and approached the woman with a tentative smile. "Excuse me," she called gently. "Would you like to come inside? It's warm there." The woman looked up slowly, her eyes revealing a depth of exhaustion and distrust, and for a tense moment, Clara feared she would refuse. Then, almost imperceptibly, a nod. Relief washed over Clara in a wave so strong, it made her knees wobble slightly. She reached out, helping the woman to her feet, and led her into the warmth of the bakery. The scent of fresh bread and cinnamon instantly wrapped around them, a comforting contrast to the harsh, wet world outside. She offered the woman a seat and a cup of hot tea, and as she watched her fingers tremble around the mug, she felt a pang of sorrow mixed with determination. "My name's Clara," she said softly, trying to bridge the invisible barrier that years of hardship seemed to have built around the woman. The woman hesitated, then whispered, "Evelyn." Clara smiled, encouragingly. They sat in silence, at first, listening to the rain hammering against the glass windows and the occasional clatter of the morning rush in the bakery. Clara's mind raced with questions. How long had Evelyn been on the streets? Did she have family? What had led her here? But more than anything, Clara felt a burning need to understand her, to connect, to help. "Evelyn, would you like something to eat?" Clara asked finally, gesturing to the display of pastries. Evelyn's eyes flickered to the assortment of warm bread and sweet rolls, her lips twitching into a shy, almost imperceptible smile. She shook her head, murmuring, "No, thank you." Clara nodded, respecting her caution, and poured her another cup of tea. Then she decided to take the leap she hadn't dared before. Would you like to tell me your story? Only if you want to, of course." Evelyn looked down at her tea, stirring it slowly, as though measuring the risk of trust. After a long pause, she nodded, and began to speak. The words came hesitantly at first, each one heavy with memories that seemed almost too painful to bear aloud. She spoke of a life that had once been full of hope, a career she had loved, a home she had built with care, the family she had adored. But then came the tragedies, each one cutting deeper. The accident that took her husband, the illness that claimed her only daughter, the series of unfortunate events that left her alone and homeless. Clara listened, barely breathing, feeling the weight of Evelyn's life pressing into her chest. There were moments when Evelyn's voice cracked, moments when she paused to gather herself, and Clara offered nothing but presence, warmth, and the occasional reassuring nod. She realized, with a shock that made her heart ache, that this woman, this stranger, had endured more pain than she could have imagined. Yet here she was, still alive, still quietly fighting. And then, just as Clara was about to speak, Evelyn's eyes widened slightly. I'm sorry," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "You shouldn't have to hear all this. It's a lot." Clara reached out, placing a gentle hand over hers. "No, Evelyn, it's not too much. I want to know, I want to understand." That small exchange, that tiny gesture of trust, shifted something profound between them. The world outside the bakery continued in its chaotic rhythm, but inside, for a moment, it felt like time had paused. Clara felt a rush of gratitude and awe, and an unshakable sense that this encounter was about to change both of their lives forever. Little did she know, what Evelyn was about to reveal next would leave her completely stunned, challenging everything she thought she knew about kindness, fate, and the mysterious ways lives intersect. Before we continue to the next chapter of this incredible story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. threads of kindness. Evelyn hesitated for a moment, her hands wrapped tightly around the warm mug, and then, in a voice so quiet it almost blended with the hum of the bakery, she began to reveal the part of her story that even she hadn't fully confronted until now. "I wasn't always like this," she said, eyes fixed on the swirling steam rising from her tea. "I had a life, a family, a home. I had dreams, Clara. I wanted to make a difference, to be someone people could rely on. But life has a way of turning everything upside down when you least expect it." Clara nodded, encouraging her to continue, sensing that Evelyn needed this release more than she needed answers. Evelyn's voice grew steadier as she recounted the chain of events that led her here, the accident that claimed her husband in an instant, leaving her to raise their daughter alone, the betrayal of friends she had trusted, the mounting medical bills, and finally, the relentless pressure of a world that seemed to offer no hand to grasp when you fell. Each detail painted a picture of profound loss and resilience that Clara found almost unbearable to imagine. But then, as Evelyn spoke, there was a spark, a hint of something stronger beneath the layers of grief. "I survived," she said simply, almost as if it were a mantra, a reminder to herself that despite losing everything, she had endured. Clara felt a lump form in her throat. She had imagined homelessness as a temporary state, a misfortune to be escaped with charity or kindness. But sitting across from Evelyn, she realized it was more than that. It was a complex web of heartbreak, endurance, and quiet dignity. "I can't tell you how many times I've felt invisible," Evelyn admitted, her voice trembling. "People walk past, look away, pretend they don't see you. It's as if you've ceased to exist in the eyes of the world." Clara reached across the table, placing her hand over Evelyn's, offering a simple touch that spoke volumes. "You're not invisible to me," she whispered, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. Evelyn's eyes glistened, and for a moment the armor of solitude she had built around herself seemed to falter. There was trust there now, fragile but real, and Clara knew that this moment was the beginning of something significant. Then Evelyn leaned back, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips, and said something that startled Clara. "There's something you need to know about why I ended up out here. Something that might surprise you." Clara's curiosity piqued, but she stayed silent, letting Evelyn guide the pace. "I wasn't just unlucky," Evelyn continued. "I made choices, some good, some not so good. But, more than anything, I was forced into circumstances I couldn't control. And now, somehow, by some strange twist of fate, you've found me." Clara's mind raced. She had expected stories of hardship, maybe even tragedy, but there was a mystery to Evelyn that she hadn't anticipated. "What is it?" she asked gently, sensing that the revelation was coming, that it would change her perception of Evelyn entirely. Evelyn took a deep breath, her gaze distant, almost as if she was seeing the events play out in her mind. "I wasn't just any person on the street, Clara," she said finally. I used to run a shelter, a home for women in need. I helped dozens of people rebuild their lives, and then everything collapsed. The fire had destroyed the building, and I couldn't save them." Clara's eyes widened, the shock settling like a weight in her chest. She had not expected. This here was a woman who had once been a pillar of hope for others, now reduced to living on the streets herself, carrying a burden of guilt that no one had ever asked her to bear. "I thought I had failed them all," Evelyn whispered, tears brimming, "and that's why I ended up here, because I believed I didn't deserve better." Clara reached out again, gripping Evelyn's hands firmly. "Evelyn, you didn't fail anyone. Life threw impossible things at you, and yet you kept going. That is strength, not failure." The warmth in Clara's voice seemed to penetrate the layers of shame and sorrow Evelyn had wrapped around herself for so long. For the first time in what felt like decades, she allowed herself to breathe, to feel the presence of someone who truly understood. And as the rain outside softened to a gentle drizzle, a fragile hope began to grow between them, fragile but persistent, like a candle flickering in the dark. Clara realized then that this encounter was more than an act of kindness. It was a turning point, a moment that could redefine both their lives. She couldn't know yet how, but she felt it deep in her bones. And for those watching, this is just the beginning of Evelyn and Clara's extraordinary journey, a story that reminds us that empathy and courage can change lives in the most unexpected ways. The next morning, Clara couldn't stop thinking about Evelyn and the revelations from the previous day. The image of her sitting there, fragile yet remarkably strong, replayed in her mind. She felt a deep responsibility to do more, to help in a way that went beyond a warm drink and shelter from the rain. With a renewed determination, Clara decided to visit Evelyn again, hoping that the connection they had formed could grow into something meaningful. When she arrived at the bakery, Evelyn was already there, quietly sipping tea in the same corner. This time, Clara brought a small bag with Essentra's fresh clothes, toiletries, and a few snacks. She placed it gently in front of Evelyn, who looked at it with a mixture of surprise and hesitation. "You didn't have to," Evelyn whispered, her eyes glistening with gratitude. Clara shook her head, smiling softly. "I wanted to. You've been through so much, and I think it's time someone reminded you that you're not alone." The first time, Evelyn allowed herself to truly smile, a warmth spreading across her face that illuminated the years of struggle she had carried silently. As they sat together, Clara suggested something daring, something that might help Evelyn reclaim a part of herself she had lost. "Have you thought about getting back into helping people? You were amazing at it before. Maybe it's not too late." Evelyn's expression darkened slightly, the memory of the fire and the lives she thought she had failed, pressing down on her once more. "I can't," she said quietly, almost too softly to hear. "I lost everything. I was responsible for so much, and now I'm just a shadow of who I used to be." Clara leaned forward, her voice firm yet gentle. "Evelyn, you are not your failures. You are the lives you touched, the hope you gave, the people you helped. And even now, you have the chance to make a difference again. I believe in you." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, and for a long moment, she simply nodded, absorbing the weight of Clara's words. Then she took a deep breath, the first of many she would need to reclaim her courage. Maybe I can," she murmured, "but I don't know where to start." Clara's heart lifted at the sound of hope in her voice. "We'll figure it out together," she said. "You're not alone anymore." The days that followed were filled with small steps, but each one was monumental for Evelyn. Clara helped her find temporary housing, connected her with local support networks, and most importantly, provided the consistent encouragement that Evelyn had lacked for so long. Each day, Evelyn grew stronger, not just physically, but emotionally. She began to speak about her experiences, sharing her story with others, and slowly, a community started to form around her. One afternoon, as they were walking through a local park, Evelyn stopped and looked around at the people enjoying the sunshine. "You know," she said softly, "I never thought I'd see this again. Life, people, happiness. I thought it was gone for good." Clara squeezed her hand. "It's never gone for good. Sometimes it just takes a little help to find it again." Evelyn smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that seemed to chase away years of darkness. That smile, Clara realized, was more than just gratitude. It was the spark of a woman rediscovering her purpose, reclaiming the identity she thought she had lost forever. But even as they walked, sharing laughter and stories, Evelyn knew that the past would always be a part of her. The fire, the loss, the street, all of it had shaped her into the person she was today. And yet, for the first time, she saw that her story didn't have to end in despair. There was hope, there was connection, and there was the possibility of rebuilding a life that mattered. Later that evening, as they sat together planning the next steps, Evelyn revealed something that made Clara's heart skip a beat. I have contacts from the shelter I used to run. Some of them have been looking for me. They never gave up hope." Clara's eyes widened. "Really? That's incredible. Maybe it's time to reconnect, to see what can be rebuilt." Evelyn nodded slowly, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. "Yes, maybe it is." And in that moment, both women felt a profound shift. What had started as a chance encounter on a rainy street corner had blossomed into a journey of healing, redemption, and newfound purpose. The possibilities seemed endless, and neither of them could have predicted the chain of events that would follow. For those watching, Evelyn's journey is a reminder that even in our darkest moments, the light of kindness and compassion can guide us toward something greater. A week later, Clara and Evelyn found themselves in a quiet community center, the air buzzing with anticipation. Evelyn had agreed, hesitantly at first, to meet with some of the women she had once helped at the shelter she had run. She wasn't sure what to expect, faces she hadn't seen in years, stories of their own struggles and triumphs, but Clara had promised to be by her side, and that gave her courage. As they entered the room, a hush fell over the small group of women. Some were young mothers, holding toddlers in their arms. Others were older women who had battled homelessness and abuse. and a few faces were unfamiliar but carried a spark of hope in their eyes. When Evelyn stepped forward, her heart pounded. In her chest, the room felt heavy with memory, loss, and anticipation. She scanned the faces, searching for recognition, searching for the connections that had once been the lifeblood of her work. Then, slowly, a few smiles appeared, tentative at first, then warmer, more assured. One woman, with bright eyes and a soft voice, spoke first. "Evelyn, is it really you?" Evelyn swallowed hard, nodding, tears threatening to spill. "Yet, it's me," she whispered. The room erupted into gentle applause, hugs, and laughter mingled with tears. Clara watched, heart swelling, as the walls Evelyn had built around herself began to crumble in the most beautiful way. The women shared their stories, some full of pain, others of hope, and Evelyn listened, offering words of encouragement, advice, and empathy. She realized that though she had lost her shelter, she hadn't lost her purpose. The spark that had once driven her to help others was reigniting, fueled by the gratitude and resilience in the room. After the meeting, Evelyn pulled Clara aside, her hands trembling slightly as she held hers. I can't believe this," she said softly. "They remembered me. They didn't forget. And I thought I'd lost everything." Clara smiled, squeezing her hands. "You didn't lose everything, Evelyn. You just needed a reminder of what you've always had inside you, the strength to lift others, even when you're struggling yourself." Inspired, Evelyn decided that she wanted to do more than just reconnect. She wanted to rebuild the shelter, to create a place where women could find safety, guidance, and hope, just like she had once given them. Clara offered to help with logistics, fundraising, and outreach, and together they began to lay the foundation for what would become a renewed mission of kindness and resilience. In the weeks that followed, they organized community events, raised awareness, and slowly gathered donations, volunteers, and support. Evelyn was overwhelmed by the generosity of people willing to help, many of whom were strangers who had heard her story or been touched by her dedication. She realized that even after years of hardship, human connection had the power to heal, rebuild, and transform lives. One evening, after a long day of planning and coordinating, Evelyn and Clara sat together in the Namty Center. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow across the room. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, a tired but fulfilled smile on her face. "I never imagined I'd feel this alive again," she admitted. Clara nodded, her eyes soft with pride and admiration. "Sometimes it takes losing everything to see what really matters and to realize that even in our darkest times, there's always a way forward." Evelyn thought about the street corner where they had first met, the cold rain, and the simple act of kindness that had sparked a chain of events she could never have predicted. It was astonishing to her that a single moment of compassion could ripple outward, touching so many lives, including her own. "Thank you, Clara," she said quietly, tears brimming but not falling. "For seeing me when no one else did, for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Clara reached across, gently squeezing her hand. "No, Evelyn, thank you for reminding me and all of us that kindness, courage, and hope can change lives in ways we never imagined." And in that moment, both women understood that their journey was far from over. The shelter, the community, the lives they had touched. The shelter's reopening morning arrived with a crisp chill, and Evelyn stood at the entrance, heart racing as volunteers bustled about. Clara arrived, a comforting presence, as the first woman trickled in, hesitant but hopeful. Evelyn greeted each with warmth, remembering how far she had come from shivering on a rainy street to leading a place of refuge. Just then, a man in a suit appeared, handing her an envelope containing documents and letters revealing that a benefactor had funded the shelter's restoration and sought to honor her role. Overwhelmed, Evelyn turned to Clara, tears streaming. "You deserve this," Clara whispered. The shelter soon filled with laughter and stories, a testament to kindness and resilience. Later, Evelyn reflected with Clara. It all started with a cup of tea, and Clara smiled. Every act of kindness carries forward. Their journey proves that even the smallest gesture can ripple outward to change lives. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Threads of Kindness to witness more stories of hope and compassion.